Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in just 1 minute. Good morning. Welcome to the Empowering People and Community series. Today's webinar is Finance 101, Quit Smoking and Take Charge of Your Finances. Today's webinar is brought to you by the Louisiana Campaign for Tobacco-Free Living. It's a program of the Louisiana Cancer Research Center and the Louisiana Public Health Institute. I am Michelle Oza. I'm the Social Health Disparity Senior Coordinator for the Louisiana Campaign for Tobacco-Free Living, and today I'll be your moderator and speaker, one of your speakers. The TFL's Empowering People Community Series mission is equitably bringing health education, resources, and hope to people, populations, and communities in Louisiana. Our learning objectives for today are identifying the links between financial stress and tobacco use, understand the economic impact of smoking, explore how quitting smoking can improve financial wellness, develop basic budgeting and money management skills, and assess resources to support financial and tobacco cessation goals. Just to make a note, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, we will have a Q&A moment. If you would put your questions in the Q&A section, we'll be happy to answer them. So we'll start off with financial health and smoking tobacco use and how they're related in the following ways. Nicotine addiction and expenditures on cigarettes may impose extra financial strain on low-income households. Stress from financial problems can make it harder to quit smoking and increase tobacco product use. Financial strain is associated with reduced likelihood of cigarette smoking cessation and increased likelihood of smoking relapse. Quitting smoking can improve financial health and turn a bad habit into a nest egg or an investment property or investment opportunity. Smoking has extensive financial implications, including direct costs, increased healthcare expenses, and potential losses in productivity. According to the World Population Review, the national average of tobacco products, or mostly cigarettes, is about $8, and in Louisiana it's about $7. And also these two numbers are pre-tax. In New Orleans is about $7. When you include tax, whether it's federal or state or both, an average annually a year if you're a pack-a-day smoker, the national average is between 2,100 and 2,500 of cigarettes that is a smoker spends a year. In Louisiana, it's about 2,500, and in New Orleans, specifically to the Marlboro brand, it's about 3,200 a year of a pack-a-day smoker spends a year on cigarettes. Some factors to consider is the price per pack. The cost of a pack of cigarettes varies by location and brand. Smoking frequency, some smokers smoke more or less than one pack per day. Other costs, besides the cost of cigarettes, smokers may incur additional expenses such as health care related to smoking or life insurance premiums. Individual variations, the actual cost can vary significantly based on individual smoking habits and preferences. There's fire risk, accidental fires from in your home or in your vehicle. There's also secondhand smoke factors that can be from healthcare costs from your family members or others exposed to secondhand smoke. And there's also potential long-term effects on your children and family, such as asthma and respiratory infections. Now, as a disclaimer, this information provided is for general education purposes and does not Does not consider medical or financial advice. For specific advice, consult with a qualified professional. Today, we have a financial advisor who is a qualified professional, Mr. Ricardo Thomas. He's a graduate of Loyola University, where he earned a bachelor's of business administration degree in finance. He is a registered financial consultant and chartered federal employee benefit consultant. He also became a fully licensed investment broker at the age of 19. He is a practicing financial consultant and is president of Thomas Waddell and Associates, Inc., a financial consulting and asset management firm with clients across the country. He has also worked as a divorce financial analyst, served as an expert witness, excuse me, and consulted on divorce cases where expert opinions were needed on divorce settlements. He is a personal finance contributor to the Good Morning Show on WBOK Radio in New Orleans. His work in personal finance has been featured in the Times-Picayune, New Orleans City Business, New Orleans Tribune, Barnes and Noble Bookstore, as well as other publications around the country. He is also involved in the community by serving as a board member for the past 22 years for Goodwill Industries of Southeastern Louisiana, where he is currently chairman of the board. He is also a board member of the Urban League of Louisiana and is the current president of the Urban League of Louisiana Guild. Additionally, he is the immediate past chair of the executive council of WWNO FM Radio, the local NPR affiliated, and lastly, as a member of the African American Leadership Council for Compassion and Choices, a national nonprofit focused on end of life planning. He is also the recipient of many awards, including Who's Who Among U.S. Executives, Who's Who in Finance and Industry, the New Orleans City Business Power Generation Award, and was named a recipient of the Five-Star Wealth Manager Award for Financial Planning and was featured in New Orleans Magazine. I now present to you Mr. Ricardo Thomas.
Well, thank you, Michelle, and good morning to everyone. Before I proceed forward, I want to give a special thank you to Michelle for inviting me and allowing me this opportunity to be a part of this very, very important webinar and conversation to discuss the intersection between health and wealth. And I'm so glad that she provided those prior slides as it relates to the cost of cigarettes and how much it amounts to on an annual basis. Oftentimes, whether it's cigarette smoking or other habits we have, I'll admit my weakness right now. I'm a sweet freak, donuts, things of that nature. And when we're doing it a little bit at a time, it's not until we step back and actually count the cost and realize just how much money we've spent on an annual basis. So I'm glad, Michelle, that you prepared that information and shared that with our audience. So we'll go on to the next slide because we have a lot of great information to cover. So as we talk about Finance 101 today, I want to get you into the right mindset because oftentimes when we're talking about personal finance these days and we hear people attempt to talk about it on social media, and we'll get into that a little bit more in a little bit, you hear the term bandied about generational wealth, and that's important, but there are some key crucial steps that have to be taken. It's not optional in order to truly achieve generational wealth. So we'll talk about that. But again, we also want to focus on the intersection between health and wealth because what we do physically or health-wise impacts our wealth and vice versa. So I want you to get into that mindset of thinking about that intersection between health and wealth and how it can impede our goals and strategies working towards generational wealth. Next slide, please. And so that's what I was alluding to first here. So we want you to count the cost, both physically and financially. Looking at it from a budget standpoint, we all should be familiar with the saying, pay me now or pay me later. You know, as she alluded to on a prior slide, the average cost of a pack of cigarettes in New Orleans can run anywhere from $7 to $9 a pack. And that's small, relatively speaking. But when you look at over a lifetime, what that $7 to $9 per week cost you. And what do I mean by that? I mean about the additional potential healthcare related costs that you have to deal with now as a result of smoking. You know, none of us are strangers at this point. I mean, every day, whether it's on social media, whether it's on legacy TV, we are inundated with information talking about the negative impact of smoking. But I think what really helps to bring it home is to put a price tag on it, to look at the cost of healthcare, to look at the cost of bringing in a caregiver or a nurse. You know, when we get into our later years, hopefully we get into those later years, and now having someone to have to come in and assist us with the activities of daily living because of the negative impact of smoking. So think about that. Think about it from a budget standpoint. Again, going back to those numbers, when you look at your budget, I want you to think about if you could redirect that roughly $3,000 a year that you've been accustomed to spending on cigarettes and have that to go in a legitimate investment vehicle where it is properly invested. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a few slides, what that could mean to your retirement, what that could mean to your future, what that could mean to the conversation of creating generational wealth. So again, counting the cost, the physical and the financial cost of smoking, and how just making that one change in decision can have a positive impact both physically and certainly financially. Next slide, please. So Finance 101 starts with us becoming more financially literate. Financial literacy leads to peace of mind. And again, going back to those slides, and Michelle, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I got to give credit where credit is due. Hats off to the information you provided in those prior slides. But we know oftentimes that cigarette smoking is associated to financial stress. So when we get our financial house in order, when we have our budget in order and knowing exactly what we're receiving in income consistently, what we are spending as far as expenses consistently, then that can help us to reduce and or hopefully eliminate that financial stress, which can then help us to reduce and eliminate cigarette smoking. But getting back to the slide here and talking about the importance of financial literacy, as the saying goes, when we know better, we can do better. And we're going to delve into that a little bit more in a minute, because oftentimes, you know, when we make financial decisions, you know, it's based upon the knowledge we have, or I should say that we don't have. And so I'm going to touch and go into that a little bit more on the next slide, please. So as we build this foundation of financial literacy and knowing the facts, here's something that I really, really wanted to share with you, because there's so much bad information out there that I wanted to bring the point home of what's really, really going on. I mean, there are countless videos on YouTube and other platforms, you know, where folks are laying out their requirements for a mate as to how much income they should be having and or they shouldn't have, as well as all the other criteria and all of that. And that's nice. But let's bring it back to reality here for a minute. And I'm going to pose the question to you. And this is based upon the information from the government, specifically the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So every 10 years, we know when they do the census, you know, and so forth, as well as income tax information and all of that good stuff, the government knows with a high level of certainty how much income people are really making, not what they're pretending to have on their social media sites, but what's really showing up on the tax returns, what's really showing up on the census. And I wanted to share this with you. So as it relates to the year 2023, because they have not completed and verified all the data for 2024 yet, but as it relates to median household income, that's with both husband and wife working, okay? Median, which is more accurate than average, because an average can be skewed to the upside or the downside if you have too many people in there that's making an exorbitant amount of income. That can skew the average. At the same time, if you have too many people in the subset that's making a small amount of income, that can skew the average as well. So they use median, which allows it to be more accurate and give us a better picture of what's going on. And contrary to what some may believe, the median household income in these United States as of 2023, with two people working, is $80,610 a year. Let me repeat that. It's not $1 million a year. It's not $200,000 a year or whatever. With two people working in these United States, the median household income is $80,610. Now, for some of you, you will be surprised. For others, you will say, oh, that's not a lot. Well, welcome to reality. But I got a little bit more news for you. Notice I said that's for the United States. Let's get into what the actual median household income is for the state of Louisiana for the year 2023. And I hope you're sitting down for this, because the median household income is only $58,200. That's the real numbers. That's not these pretend ballers on YouTube and TikTok and all of this. These are the real numbers. $80,610 for the entire country, $58,200 for the state of Louisiana. So it helps us to put things into perspective as it relates to our expectations of incomes for ourselves, as well as for our mates and so forth. These are the real numbers that we're dealing with and what we have to deal with as it relates to managing our finances, managing our households, and managing our expectations for the future. Next slide, please. So as we're building the foundation for Finance 101, look at it like baking a cake. We need to have the right ingredients. You know, again, as I started out saying, we all talk about now wanting to create generational wealth, leaving something for the next generation. And that's a very lofty goal. But my first question is, can I really realistically expect to leave something for the next generation if I haven't taken care of business for the present? So that being said, let's look at the ingredients for financial success for the present. And I'm going to go through the list of all the different components that make up the financial cake, if you will. But obviously, for the purpose of today, we're going to emphasize the budget. But let's go through all of the components, because we know, just like with baking a cake, yeah, I may have the recipe. Yeah, I may have the eggs, but if I don't have the flour and all the other things that go into it, it won't be too much of a cake. Well, the same thing here with your financial picture. We cannot realistically expect to achieve any level of financial success if we're not taking in all of these components. And it starts with budgeting, which is why I highlighted that one. Budgeting, it requires us to know what is our real income coming in on a monthly basis. Now, usually this one is fairly easy for most of us, because if you're doing your tax returns on a timely basis each year, you're getting your W-2 forms or 1099s or whatever proof of income that you're receiving. So you have a very good idea of what your gross income is. And if you maybe, are working in a cash business or what have you, commit it to paper and write down what you are realistically receiving. Okay, so that side of the equation for most folks is pretty easy. The one where we usually start to get into trouble is the other side of the equation and looking at what our monthly expenses are. Now, I used to say before the advent of debit cards, take $100 bill, put it in your wallet or purse, and you can keep it in there for weeks, if not months. Break it into 520s and it's gone before you know it. Well, these days, we have that issue with the debit cards, and because in most places now, many don't even accept cash, even less accept checks, and it's so much more convenient to pull out that plastic and swipe it. But the question is, how many of us are going to our checking account register and writing down all of our expenses that we're expending on a daily basis to know exactly what we're spending and where and how and so forth. So that's the important other side of the equation, to know exactly where you're spending. Again, as the program started out today, talking about the cost of smoking and how much that adds up to, and think about what could really happen with saving that money and redirecting it from cigarettes over to your financial future or whatever other financial goals that you have. So I strongly encourage all of you, if you have not done it before, be honest with yourself and write down, commit it to paper, what are your income sources, and then write down the other side, what are your expenses. And again, even with the debit card, it's easy to track. Just log into your account online and go back and look at for the last 30 to 90 days where and how you spent money. And then once you get up off the floor from passing out, that's a joke, then you'll see exactly where your money is going. And then you can start the conversation in saying, what can I now do better to navigate and redirect some of these funds so that I can take care of my future? So that's the area of budgeting. Risk management is a fancy way of saying insurance. And the whole purpose of insurance, regardless of what type it is, whether it's life insurance, health insurance, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, is to reduce the risk to your finances and transferring some or all of that from you to the appropriate insurance company. Okay? So risk management or insurance is about transferring risk, because we all know life happens. That's a fact. Things are going to happen. And for all of us watching this or participating today, we all know a thing that happened roughly about 20 years ago from right now, a little thing called Hurricane Katrina. And we know how devastating that was to our area. But what made it even more so devastating were the number of homeowners who did not have homeowners insurance anymore because they believed once the house was paid for, well, I don't need that anymore, which left them bearing the risk that if something happened to their home, they're now bearing the risk and the entire cost of having to replace that home. The purpose of insurance, and in that case, homeowners, is to transfer that risk to whatever degree that you purchased from you to the insurance company. Well, the same thing happens with auto insurance. If I get in a wreck, I don't want it to end up putting me on the street or affecting my family's finances and household budget. I want to transfer that risk over to the insurance company. Same thing with medical insurance. If I end up getting sick, and that's so critical here with the conversation we're having, talking about the intersection between health and wealth, and specifically smoking. Well, God forbid I have to go into the hospital due to smoking. Now, what financial impact does that make to my family when I'm no longer an income provider and I now have additional medical related costs due to me smoking. So in order for us to truly achieve financial success, we have to keep in mind risk management. Moving on to retirement. Contrary to popular belief, retirement has nothing to do with age. It has everything to do with money. If I'm 95 and broke, I'll be working. If I'm 25 and have a few $1,000,000, I have the option to retire. The question is for many of us is, have we taken the time to calculate our own specific retirement price tag? Because no two people's situations are the same. What you may have in your mind as it relates to the type of lifestyle you want in your retirement or golden years is different from the next person. So you have to quantify it to see if you're on the right track to be able to retire or have to continue working. And the time to think about retirement is not 5 years or less from the date that you plan to cross that threshold at your job. The time to start thinking about retirement is right now. The earlier, the better, because now you have more time on your side to put monies aside and work towards your retirement goal. For example, not even factoring in inflation, but if you determine that your retirement budget, there's that word again, budget, if it takes you $50,000 a year to live on in retirement, and it is not uncommon these days for people to live 20 to 30 years in retirement. So, well, let's just do some simple math and not factoring in inflation. If I need 50,000 a year, I'm no longer working, and I live for 20 years in retirement, that's $1,000,000. If I live 30 years, that's $1.5 million. So the question becomes, do I have $1,000,000 if that's my numbers? Do I have $1.5 million if that's my number? Have I been participating in the 401k? Have I been taking advantage of the match? Am I getting the right rate of return to make this a reality? And if I'm not, then now is the time to make the necessary changes. Retirement does not, or I should say retirement success does not happen by accident. Okay, so moving on to the next one, estate planning, and this one is very critical in the conversation of generational wealth, because let's say we've done all the right things or most of the right things, we got our financial house in order and we've accumulated wealth, and that's great. Now, we all know we're going to leave here. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. So the concern becomes, have I put instructions in place to make sure that those assets, to make sure that the estate that I've created, whether large or small, will go to those that I want it to? Because when we don't write a will, then we leave it to the court system to make that decision. It doesn't matter what I told to Uncle Joe or what grandma told me or what mama told me by mouth. If it's not in writing, in proper order, in a will, it doesn't mean a hill of beans. You know, so oftentimes I've seen so many family spats and struggles and properties lost because of folks not taking care of business as it relates to their estate planning. And we saw a glimpse of this during the height of the pandemic when we had many of our loved ones, unfortunately, were impacted by COVID, going into the hospital. They had no advance directives or instructions on what type of care they want or what decisions they wanted made on their behalf. And unfortunately, due to their declined health, due to COVID, they were not in a position to make those decisions for themselves. You know what happens then? That's where the courts get involved again. So again, if you want to keep family peace of mind, do it in writing. Have a will. Have the other adjoining documents that are important as well. Powers of attorney, healthcare powers of attorney, and so forth. Moving on to the next one, investing. We're going to explore that a little more on the next slide as well, is that there is a big difference between saving and investing. And I'm about to give a news flash to some. Contrary to popular belief, buying a car is not an investment. because we all know as soon as you drive off the lot, the car is not worth what you paid for it. It immediately depreciates. In the true definition of the word investment, whatever it is that you've purchased or have or labeled as an investment, it has to have the ability to do what? Two things: appreciate as well as depreciate. If it's only on the depreciating side, no matter what we like to call it, it's not an investment. Okay? And we have to understand the difference between saving and investing. What we do in the bank, typically for checking and savings and even CDs, that's a savings strategy or a savings vehicle. Investing calls for long-term monies that we want to set aside for a 5 to 7 year period or longer, such as for retirement, or longer, such as for our kids' future college education, or whatever other long-term goals. But we have to get a better return, and we're going to talk about that more on the next slide. The last category I'll mention here before we move on is tax planning. It is absolutely critical that we do our tax returns on time every year to avoid any unnecessary penalties and interest, unless you're just that patriotic and you like giving away money to Washington, D.C. Okay, but for the rest of us who are not that patriotic, make sure you're doing your tax returns properly, and make sure you're dealing with qualified professionals. Now, a quick tip on that, how to know whether or not you're dealing with a qualified professional. If the person who's doing your tax return is unwilling to sign their name on it too, you might want to look at other options. Okay? Because on the 1040 form, on the back page of the 1040 form, there's a space for the taxpayer to sign. There's also a space for the tax preparer to sign. And if they're not willing to do that, then if there is a problem with the IRS as it relates to your tax return, you're left holding the bag and you're exposed by yourself. So again, what level of tax professional you need will vary depending on the complexity of your situation and the amount of income. You know, for some, being able to do it online with some of the different tax preparation software is fine. For others, they may have to go to some of, the tax preparation companies and so forth, and that's okay if that fits your need. For others, they may need the services and knowledge and expertise of a certified public accountant. So we'll talk a little bit about that in an upcoming slide as well. So next slide, please. So this one here is also critical in this age of social media. Information is only as good as the source. Okay, let me repeat that one. Information is only as good as the source. There are so many people that are online every day giving all kinds of so-called great financial advice. The road to get riches overnight. If it was that easy, we wouldn't have to do this workshop today. Everybody would be laying out on the beach with their private jet and fine. But clearly, the information they're providing is not necessarily to your benefit, or in many cases, just not right at all. So make sure that we are being very careful about who and where we get our information. And like I said, there's not a day that I log in online, whether it's, whatever social media platform you want to utilize, where, all of these folks talking about, oh, I learned how to make this using this, and I'm a millionaire now, and I'm making so many hundreds of thousands per month and so forth. And again, let's go back to one of the earlier slides when I gave you from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that the median household income is only 80,000 plus, and in Louisiana it's only 58,000 plus. So as you all say these days, that math ain't mathing. So for all these folks out there claiming to make all these hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands per month, that's not adding up consistently with what the data is showing, okay? So let's move on to the next slide. It's important to work with qualified professionals. Now, before I get into understanding how money works, let me just, if we can go back to that previous slide for one moment, Michelle, and I'm sorry. Let me give you that list of qualified professionals. So I'll start with the accountant or tax preparer, as we alluded to on the prior slide of the tax preparer. Banker, it is very important for you to know your banker. Now, I'm not talking about the teller. It's great to know the teller and they know you because you come in frequently to make deposits or whatever, but they are not the decision makers. It is to your benefit to take the time to meet the branch manager of the whatever banking institution you deal with so that they get to know you. The time for them to get to know you is not the first time you go in there for a car loan or a home loan or any other type of loan. You should have already been establishing a rapport with them because it's about relationships. The old saying still applies. It's not just what you know, it's also who you know. So take the time to go to your branch that you go to frequently, introduce yourself, let them know you've been a customer of theirs for so many years and so forth, and make sure they see you periodically. So when that day comes, when you need to submit an application for some type of loan or credit card or whatever through them, that you're not some stranger coming in off the sidewalk. You've established a rapport. They know you have accounts with them. Relationships matter. Next, financial advisors, such as myself. The world is so much more complicated than it was just 1 or 2 generations ago. There's so many things to keep up with. There's so many pieces of the financial puzzle, and it can be very overwhelming that can cause paralysis. You can say, oh, I don't understand it. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to back off from it. And you're losing precious time and money by dealing with a qualified financial professional. And I'm going to talk about some of the criteria to look for, and all of these in a minute can help make a difference. There's a reason why we go to a hospital and get surgery done as opposed to looking at a YouTube video on doing heart surgery or whatever type of surgery. Experience matters. Training matters. Next, insurance agents. Again, you want to deal with qualified professionals that are affiliated with reputable, long-standing firms. Of course, you can always do a little bit of research with the state of Louisiana or whatever state you're a resident in to find out the standing of the company, as well as the agent, and so forth, to find out if they are licensed. But do your due diligence as it relates to them to make sure they have the training, experience, and expertise that you need in order for them to give you, better advice and or recommendations. The last one is attorneys. And again, not all attorneys are created equal. There are different specialties of attorneys. There are tax attorneys, there are estate planning attorneys, there are business attorneys, there are divorce attorneys, there are personal injury attorneys. Those are the ones that we're mostly familiar with because those are the ones who bombard our TVs every day with various types of commercials and so forth. But with all of these professionals, these are some of the criteria that you should ask for. And if they are unwilling or unable to give you that information or answer these questions, then it's on to the next one. Okay, so ask about their education. What school did they go to? Did they graduate? What level of degree they have, whether it's bachelor's, master's, PhD, or whatever, and it varies depending on the field of study. What additional credentials? Do they have any certifications behind their name, whether it's CPA for Certified Public Accountant, RFC for Registered Financial Consultant like myself, or CFP or JD for an attorney, and so forth. Look for those credentials because it tells you that that person is committed to further education for further expertise in their particular field of practice and so forth. And with that, with all of those types of designations, they require ongoing continuing education because we know the only thing that's constant in life is change. So they have to keep up to date. The last thing with that is look for their years of experience because again, if you have a more complex situation, it will require someone with more experience and expertise. That's why oftentimes with a doctor, your primary care doctor, after getting that blood work or x-rays or whatever, they'll say, oh, well, I have to refer you to a specialist. Okay, so now let's go over to the next slide and let's talk about how money works, because we've been laying the foundation, talking about the budget, all the different ingredients. We've talked about the various different professionals that make up your financial dream team, if you will, in order to work towards your goal of achieving financial success. But for you, you have to understand how money works, because if we have the wrong expectations, then many times we will be sorely disappointed or vastly unprepared or underprepared. So with this here, I want you all to write down or to research the rule of 72. Now, some of you may be familiar with it. Others of you may have heard it before, but it explains how compound interest works. And I'll walk through the example with you. Let's say you have a plain vanilla savings account at the bank. And let's say you on that bank account is paying you 3% interest. And they tell you 3% APY, which stands for annual percentage yield, or APR, which stands for annual percentage rate, and all of that good stuff, but it all works out to be the same thing. The question is, and regardless of the amount of money, whether it's $1,000 or $1 million, math is math. It all works out the same. So to make it simple and quick here, let's use $1,000. If you're getting 3% on your money, all you have to do is take your rate of return, in this case 3, divide it into the number 72. And it tells you not how many days or months or weeks, but how many years it takes to double your money one time. So we're literally going back to elementary school and doing some plain old division. 3 goes into 72 24 times. So how many years does it take to double your money one time? 24 years. 3 times 24 equals 72. Now, for some of you, you may have passed out, but we hope for you to get back up and you're okay. But you're saying that can't be. Look it up, Google it or what have you, and Google the rule of 72, and it will line up with exactly what I'm saying. So let's say you're just getting 1% on your money. The process and the math and the division is the same. 1 goes into 72 times. So it'll take you 72 years to double your money. Now, what's the problem with that? That takes entirely too long. That's why I alluded to in a prior slide that there's a big difference between saving and investing. So in order for us to achieve our financial goals, in order for us to achieve financial success and think about even accumulating any type of wealth to pass on to the next generation, we have to make sure that we understand how money works. We can't get mad that if I put my money in the wrong vehicle and I'm unprepared for retirement or underprepared for my child's education and said, oh, it was a lousy investment. Well, no, maybe I used the wrong thing for the wrong reason. That's like trying to use penicillin for COVID. Penicillin is a great medicine, but we all know penicillin is not the answer for everything. Not only that, we also know that some people are allergic to penicillin. So it's not a one size fits all. That's why we have to deal with qualified professionals so that we can understand we're using the right things for the right reasons. So again, understand how money works so you can have the right expectations, whether we're talking about your 401k, 403b, your IRA, your Roth account, it all goes back to the math, the rule of 72. So hopefully this helped you out in understanding that as we move to the next slide. So now we want to connect the dots, okay? So we started out talking about the negative impact of smoking and how we know it impacts our health and the potential costs later on because of our declined physical state, to our lungs and other aspects of our body due to smoking, okay? then we looked at the other side of the equation of getting our financial house in order, becoming more financially healthy. So we're going to connect the dots here and think about, and I want each of you to think about for a moment. And again, you can go online. There are many calculators to help you with this, utilizing the rule of 72 or compound interest tables and so forth to show that if you saved that $3,000 from not purchasing cigarettes anymore, what that could amount to. And let's say hypothetically, if you're just getting 8% on your money for the next 20 years. So $3,000 a year invested in an investment that averages 8% for the next 20 years, what that could be for you. Now, I'm not going to give you the answer here because I want you all to do it for yourselves online. You can Google it or what have you. But this is about connecting the dots, imagining the savings from not smoking and investing the proceeds and realizing what positive impact that it makes on you. Number one, when you look at what that number is, we realize one, there's no pack of cigarettes or whatever is worth that. Number two, when you look at what that number can be, that certainly reduces the financial stress level. And then number three, it gets you closer to whatever your financial goals are, whether it be for yourself or retirement planning, kids' future education, or passing on that generational wealth. There's that terminology again. So next slide. So with that, we want to open up the floor to any questions that may have come out of anything that I've discussed. Hopefully you have found this helpful. If you have any questions after today, you are welcome to go to my website at www.thomaswaddell.net. That's www.thomaswaddell.net. There are a lot of educational videos on there on a variety of financial topics. We also have a Facebook page where we put up posts on a variety of financial topics on a regular basis. It's totally generic. We're not advocating one company over another company or one investment or over another. It's all about giving you that foundation of basic education. And then from there, if a person wants to take it further, that's totally up to them. But please take advantage of those resources that are there. And so with that, I'm going to turn the floor back over to Michelle so that we can entertain any questions that may exist.
Thank you, Ricardo. I'll give a chance for anyone if you have any questions. I'll just start with a predetermined question. The first question I'll ask is, what budgeting tips do you recommend for individuals who are trying to cut back on smoking and manage other living expenses at the same time?
Okay, good question there. So I think the first tip is committing it to paper. Okay, writing it down. You know, how does the saying go? Write it down, make it plain. You know, it doesn't become real until it becomes tangible, till you can see it. You know, like I said earlier, you know, when we're spending money, I mean, think about folks who may buy Starbucks coffee on a daily basis. And I hope I'm not getting in too much trouble on that. But you think about how much it costs for that latte on a daily basis, and some people may be getting that 5 to 7 days a week and adding that up. It's the same thing. So take a moment to step back, sit down, and actually count the cost to your pocket and saying, well, how much am I spending on these cigarettes or what have you? And what else could I be doing with that money? Perhaps I may have an insurance need, you know, to protect my family or what have you, and so forth. How often do we see these days that people are dying and are grossly not prepared and having to do car washes and suppers, or for the sophisticated folks now, doing GoFundMe pages to give someone a decent or adequate burial. So it first starts with running the numbers, counting the cost, and then seeing how that difference there can help, even from a debt standpoint. You know, before you even jump to the investing part, think about if I can save, $2,000 to $3,000 a year, and let's say if I have outstanding credit card debt or outstanding loans or what have you, if I could redirect those same funds to pay out some of these debts, that reduces the financial stress. That helps to increase or improve your financial picture and gets you on the right path for your financial future. So hopefully that helped out a little bit.
Okay, now we have another question
Mhm.
that was asked is, if somebody's living paycheck to paycheck, what are the first steps that they should take to savings or investing? Just like, what are their first steps that they should do to become, I guess, financially stable?
Okay, and that's a very good question as well. Especially these days of the cost of living, certainly many of us understand that we're having to deal with, living from paycheck to paycheck. So again, I have to, and if I sound like a broken record, it's somewhat intentional, but it's also going to the foundation of this whole process. It goes back to the budget and knowing how much income you have and what your legitimate expenses are. And when we talk about expenses, you can break it up into two categories: fixed expenses, variable expenses, the necessities, the needs versus the wants. So fixed expenses are the needs, such as your rent or house note, your light bill, your water bill, your gas for your vehicle, your insurance for your vehicle, your insurance for your house. Those are the necessity expenses. So those are there, that's needed day in and day out, or month in and month out. So we want to first look at our budget and make sure all of those areas are being covered. If they are not being covered to the extent that needs to be, then we have to step back and say, well, do I need to seek additional employment? Or maybe do I need to transition to another job that pays me more? Okay, because math doesn't lie. Math is absolute. If my household budget to run my household is $3,000 a month, and my job is only paying me $2,000 a month, I don't have to be Einstein to figure out is that I have $1,000 a month deficit. So I either need to cut my expenses, and if I can't cut my expenses, the only other alternative is to get another job that pays more, or get a second job that can help supplement the other income that I have. But that's where it starts, with the budget, looking honestly at our income, looking very, very honestly at our expenses, and cutting out those things that that we would like to want but don't necessarily need. I like to go to every night of the Essence Festival and sit in front of the stage, and so forth. But is that reasonable? Is that realistic for me to go to the Cowboy Carter concert? So I'm trying to make it relevant here and present, and spend thousands of dollars, and then next month I can't pay my rent. No, so we have to be adult about it and prioritize. So I think that's where the process starts, in separating the needs versus the wants, and then running the numbers. And once you run the numbers, I call them the pages of revelations. It will tell you what you need to know, good or bad. Okay, next question.
We're gonna wrap up on questions. We have 5 more minutes left in the webinar. I'm gonna go into some of our resources, but thank you, Ricardo, for those questions and answers. Thank you, everyone, for the questions. Again, just to bring it back, this is the Louisiana Campaign for Tobacco-Free Living, and just want to talk about some of the resources that we have that are free to those that's across the state of Louisiana that would like to start their quit journey. So we have the Louisiana Tobacco Quit Line Services. We have the 1-800-QUIT NOW that you can call. We have the website, quitwithusla.org, and we have the text ready to 34191, so you can start your journey. Again, everything is free. You get a coach, you get patches, you can get counselors, whatever support that you need to start your journey. If you coming back to restart your journey, there's no fee if you started today and then 2 months later you decide you want to do it, or you relapse, or whatever the case is. Every time you come back, every time you use the service, it's all completely free to you. You're welcome to use the service at any time, any point. Also for those that vape, especially to some of our teens that are vaping, we have the Quit Line services ages 13 to 17 as well for those individuals that are vaping. And then we have the Live Vape Free that is also for teens specifically, that is a text based service that teens can text to help them to quit as well from the vaping epidemic that is going on. And this is also, again, another free service that you all can use as well. And then just want to say thank you all for joining us today on this webinar. Thank you again, Mr. Ricardo Thomas, for being our financial expert on this webinar. And everyone, please, if you can, at the end of this webinar, if you can answer our survey, we appreciate it to get your feedback on how we should improve or any topics that you would like us to talk about or any other comments and input. Thank you all again, and y'all. I hope you have a good afternoon. Thank you.
And thank you for having me.